Welcome to Feminized. It's time for a show that turns the spotlight on the powerful women shaping cannabis culture. The cannabis industry is on fire and women are sparking it up. If you like the show, please subscribe. You can also subscribe to the Feminized podcast with Liz Grow on YouTube and Instagram. The future is feminized.
Hey sis.
You're now listening to the Feminized podcast.
I'm so thrilled to welcome my next guest today, Annick Goldsmith. She's the founder of the Black Market Group. And the Black Market Group is creating an authentic business model for legacy operators that allow them to retain their voice and operate on their terms. When I heard this, I knew I had to have you on. Annick, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here.
So let's jump right in. Tell me about the Black Market Group and what you have built.
So we're kind of pairing legacy operators with legacy folks from rap and hip hop. There's a lot of connective tissue between these two pieces. I recognized that we needed to lend a voice that had a little bit broader audience to the larger issues around legacy cultivators in the space, and building a brand that's based on legacy operators on both ends. Actually, there's some stuff that we're in the works for on the retail side of it as well. Mm-hmm. The most direct way to speak to cannabis consumers is through rap and hip hop. If we're being direct and honest about it, it has the largest, that's the shortest cycle between that and influencing the culture. And so when we started talking with these folks, they instantly got it. They instantly got what it meant to build the thing and to be an innovator in space, and then to have that ripped away from you, and to not own a piece of this momentous this massive thing, like what happened with rap and hip hop in the late 90s and the early 2000s, how a lot of folks don't own their art, don't own their masters. And, the people that were disruptors or whatever that were building an industry against all odds, had that taken from them. So it felt really natural for us to be able to pair those two things together.
Wow, that's very deep and thoughtful, I have to say. From the outset, it feels like you have a really personal connection with the legacy market and helping them to survive. I mean, just, the musical connection, that gets us at our soul. And I've never heard anybody talk about how cannabis gets to the consumer like you had just now. So that was just really, you just kind of blew my mind there, because it's just so right there. It's so obvious. The first time anybody ever, I got 5 on it, it's just like, I don't even know what I'm singing about, but it feels good, and that's how we learn about cannabis. So how did you get there? Tell me about your journey. Where are you now? We just had a little chat before we started recording. So talk to me about where you are now.
I live in Sonoma County now. I used to be up in Humboldt and northern Mendocino. I came from a sales background. I lived in New York City for a long time. I came from a sales background. I did some side hustling in the traditional cannabis space. And I had worked in finance and finance sales. And through a bunch of weird circumstances, I ended up in Humboldt County and working with folks who were legacy operators, who had been in the space since the 60s, and had this moment where I was always drawn towards sales because you kind of eat what you kill. Yeah. And so some of the sexism and stuff, you can combat that by saying, look, I literally sold more than you. I literally did this concrete thing, and you can't hold the fact that I'm a 5'2" mouthy woman against me, because I literally did. Here's a concrete thing that I did.
Oh, my sister.
And when I got into cannabis, it felt like that. It was the same thing, because you have this concrete plant, and you are better at growing it or I can move X amount of dirt from point A to point B. It's this very concrete thing. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, there's sexism in this space, wild and crazy, but not among folks who have been in it for a long time, who don't have the ego in the game anymore, who look at you and go, wow, you come to my farm and you work hard and you bring new ideas, and I'm not threatened by that because I'm just trying to make money. I've been in this game since the 60s. I'm not interested in the ego play of who's got a bigger dick, excuse my language, but that's the real like underpinning it. So I felt this thing and I was like, wow, this is incredible. And I was just immediately drawn to it. And it felt so satisfying to me to not have that friction of, I don't know, just being viewed a certain way because I'm a woman in a male dominated space, which I have been my whole career.
Right. Oh, God damn, sister. Yes. Dick is a word we use all the time here at the Feminized podcast. Well, there's a term I like to use. You got to put your dick out on the table. You know?
Sure do.
You know, and flop it out there. But nobody knows that better than salespeople. I love that. I worked in sales for 10 years prior in tech. Before getting into production and making cannabis the focus of our work. So, oh man, I hear you. It's just so satisfying being able to have a goal, have a plan, execute, boom. It's like rinse and repeat.
Right, it's concrete.
Yeah.
It's like it's a real thing that you can't take away from me. Like, you can't diminish the value of what I've produced in the world. Because it's real and concrete and it's measurably better or whatever than what you're doing. And so that was a game changer for me. It was really rewarding. And cannabis is there's so many layers to it. It's so complex. You get to like invent things. You get to be creative. You get to, because it's new and there's not huge scale agronomic studies, you get to like come to this space and be creative and come up with solutions and problem solve and link processes and all that. So that was really validating for me.
Yeah, like marries it seems to, you know, marry the best of that drive to achieve with that creativity to, you know, innovate and, you know, find a better solution. I mean, that's just what I find with cannabis folks, people who are driving businesses, you know, in the space. It's like they really want to solve a problem. You know, their hearts are in that problem, you know, and get excited when they find different ways to.
It's super fun. Like, what other space is so undefined in the world right now that you literally get to go to work and be like, I'm going to invent a whole new system for this. It's so, it's exciting and it's so fun.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So were you ever, so how long have you been in cannabis specifically?
I started in the traditional market in 2008, 2009, in New York, in the wholesale aspect of it. I ended up being a cultivator. I started working in cultivation in 2015. I was abated, which was a program, the planning department kind of took an approach to try and reduce the amount of cannabis cultivators in Humboldt County, and it was sort of abatement, where they would basically send you a thing and you had $10,000 a day fines unless you immediately pulled everything down. So obviously that was the end of our operation in Southern Humboldt.
Yeah.
As a run up to legalization. Also in that same time, I was arrested with a significant amount of products. So I was on felony probation. And so I switched into the hemp space for a while, just because I didn't really feel like going to jail.
Yeah.
And that was phenomenal because it gave me this 30,000. I didn't realize it at the time. I was just like, I guess this is what I'm going to do. But it gave me this 30,000 foot view of the way supply chain systems are going to organize themselves once we don't have siloed markets in the country anymore. Once product and things can move across borders, and then, you know, cultivation shifts to optimize regions. And it just really showed what's going to happen, some elements of what's going to happen as we move towards federal legalization.
Wow.
So that was really educational. I only jumped back into THC space in the last year or so.
With the Black Market Group.
Yeah. When we started Black Market Group, and the opportunity to work with, Infamous Farms and then RAKIM for a higher frequency flower as well presented itself.
Wow. How did those opportunities come about? I mean,
yeah, one of my great friends, his name is Matt Markoff. He's known as M80, and he does A&R for like Wu-Tang and a bunch of folks in that classic hip hop space. And he was able to connect us with folks because I recognized it as I wanted to build national brands that were based on legacy operators and optimized growing regions. But like nobody gives a shit who I am, which is fine. Like I'm great with that. But I needed to pair that. I didn't want to build a brand. For a minute, I approached the idea of like, okay, let's build a consumer facing brand. And I'm like, why would I start from scratch on a thing in a highly competitive space when there are existing brands out there? And we approached licensing really differently, like licensing IP really differently than a lot of folks did, which were, it was a journey to get over the hump of explaining to some of these artists why, you know, traditionally structured licensing deals, as opposed to the way a lot of people in cannabis do it, which is like, I just want your name and I want a strain named after you and I'll give you half of my money to do it. That's not a sustainable business.
No.
So, yeah, but like the first artist that we signed was with RAKIM, and I went to his house back in December before Emerald Cup, and he just instantly got it. He instantly understood that if we don't preserve legacy in a space, that stuff goes away.
Yes.
And it really made a lot of sense to us to pair these legacy operators and rap and hip hop with legacy folks in the cultivation space.
God, that is so fucking cool.
It's pretty fun.
What?
Like,
so
like I have these moments where I'm like, I went to Game 4 of the NBA playoffs with the Nets and the Celtics last Monday with RAKIM, who was performing at halftime. And I'm like, I have these moments where I'm like, what in the fuck is even happening right now? This is like childhood dream shit. And here I am hanging out with RAKIM and his crew, and they're so nice and wonderful.
Yeah, and everyone is there for a purpose, and it's a higher purpose. You know, It's not some Brad or Chad taking you out on a night at Barclays, to wine and dine you and then offer you 15% for your name and your life's work.
Right.
And those are the other conversations that were probably being had in a couple of boxes over, because it feels very predatory. It feels very like the vultures are just constantly circling in this industry. So, the fact that you're just focused on connecting these legacy operators who've done the work and these marketers, for lack of a better term, these hip hop culture creators. It's fucking, you're brilliant.
I mean, think about the 90s, right? Okay, let's think about like the biggest threats to American culture and society in the 90s.
Yeah.
Was like rap and hip hop. Remember all the parental advisory warning and the congressional hearings and this is and that, right? Marijuana, which is the scourge of the American youth. And like even things like skateboard culture and these grimy street kids. Right now, if we look at 20, 30 years later, rap and hip hop is 80% of music revenues in the world right now. Right? Cannabis is pushing to be a $25 billion a year industry, and freaking skateboarding's in the Olympics. Like, so you look at folks that were creating culture against all odds, and there's so much stuff that lines up with that, There are people in the space who are ahead of their time, and were vilified for it. I mean, I know, talking with these OG folks who are cultivators from the Emerald Triangle and Southern Humboldt and all that from the beginning, you talk to women. My friend's grandmother, I'll keep her name out of it, but she's like, while baking you an apple pie, she's talking about living in tree platforms and how if I put a plant in the ground, Nancy Reagan personally showed up to pull it out with 18 SUVs, right? These are the same, this 75, 80-year-old woman baking me pies talking about living in tree platforms is the same as RAKIM, is the same as Wu-Tang, is the same as Mobb Deep, is the same as these folks who were making culture and pushing to make this culture long before it was widely accepted.
Yes.
So it is like, it's all the same to me. I mean, that's really how I see it.
Oh, I love it. I love that you're driving this and you're creating a framework around it. And you're multi-state, you're in Cali and New York.
We're launching in New York. We have two cultivation operations that we're partnered with in New York. Ironically, the whole time of 3 years that I spent in the hemp space was really good. It allowed me to, I worked with a lot of small operators at that time doing consulting work and helping them develop SOPs and protocols for cultivating for flower. And then once New York turned on, they handed provisional licenses to hemp operators in New York who had been operating under the research licenses. So There's about 250 operators that qualify for provisional cannabis licenses. It's like $2,000. They get a 2-year license that includes like distribution for the first year.
Oh my God.
And a lot of these folks do need help because they came from the hemp space. And before that, a lot of them were maybe market gardeners, like vegetable growers, pumpkins, tomatoes, things like that. And so working with those folks and starting to figure out, talking to lobbyists and folks in New York and starting to figure out how the New York market's going to organize.
Mm-hmm.
New York looks at California and it's a mess.
Yeah.
And they're doing a really good job at this point of saying, we know that one thing we don't want to be is that. And so they're really looking at how they structure the market. Yes, they're taking time, which has caused this crazy gray area market to explode in New York City. It's wild there right now.
Yeah.
But they're taking their time to formulate the regulations so that they don't end up like California. They recognize that they can't view cannabis industry like the ATM that most states view it. Mm-hmm. If we got a problem with roads or schools or policing or whatever, let's take it from take it from weed.
Yeah.
And it's an agricultural product at this point, moving towards that. So it's, the margins are going down. Mm-hmm. Operations have to be leaner. And if you tax these entities to death, that usually comes out of two places: the cultivator, the farmers, and their employees. The
lowest on the totem pole, the lowest on the totem pole. Just to put it out there. I mean, truly, that's what's happening. I really I want to hear more about your thoughts about what's happening in California, and how it sounds like really small farms are being just completely squeezed out, just robbed and pushed out because they can't afford to stay in.
These are the operators who came to the table in earnest in 2016 and said, on a piece of paper, this is where I live. This is where I've lived for X number of years. I have been black market growing cannabis, and I am coming to you in earnest to come out. And the first round of atrocities was the consultant chaos and working with the planning departments and the kind of unnecessary burdens that they placed on operators at that time. Your road had to be this. You had to have, even though if you're sitting on your property sits on a mountaintop, you need to be able to turn a fire truck around on your place. Here's all these like wild burdens that they layered on people. And that was the first round of atrocities of people who came out of the shadows in earnest, in absolute earnest, while all their neighbors said, you're a fool. You're making the wrong choice. They're just going to come get you. And maybe they didn't come get them in the way that they thought that this was going to happen. But now here we are, 6 years later, and 60% of the operators are probably not going to exist in this space. There has been some tax. Certain counties like Humboldt County has removed Measure S, which is like a flat canopy tax. The tax that they tax cultivators merely to exist, regardless of how much they grow, regardless of even if they grow. Sometimes 6-figure taxes levied on the smallest margin in the industry. And at the end of the day, this stuff comes out of employees' pockets and it comes out of cultivators' pockets. A pillar of black market is that we are trying to create a supply chain where nobody gets paid less than $20 an hour because there needs to be dignity in work. And that was a pillar of the black market. Say what you will about the black market and all of its inherent problems. People got paid.
Right.
Right. It supported a lot of folks with living wage jobs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's chaos and I don't know what can be done at this point to save some of these folks who have gotten crushed recently. It's all restructuring at this point. I mean, There was supposed to be a canopy cap for the first 5 years, but people were stacking licenses. Now you've got these multi-acre grows that go down. And, if we look to the wine industry as a reference point, sure, Santa Barbara produces more grapes per acre, but the value of grapes per acre in Napa County and Sonoma County is higher. Despite the fact that there's a smaller yield, the dollar number that the grapes are worth per acre is higher. And so something I learned from the hemp industry is that quality and craft does not scale infinitely. You don't get infinity economy of scale. It's impossible.
No.
You have bottlenecks. Go ahead. Try. Everyone's freaked out about Philip Morris, and I wouldn't be. Go ahead and try to take down 5 acres of flower at the same time. By all means, where are you going to find 1,500 workers who are trained enough to do it for you and only work for 3 weeks? And where are you also putting it? Because it's like 3,000 square foot of dry space per acre minimum. And that's at like 16-foot ceilings on stacks. So it's like, someone will be running these farms that people spent their life building. And I wish that it were going to be legacy operators. But at this point, it's going to be folks who are waiting. I just heard it on a call the other day. Why buy anything now? Let's just wait a year and buy it for pennies on the dollar. So somebody will be operating these farms.
Right.
We want it to be legacy operators.
Yes.
But we have to make meaningful changes in the consumer culture to get there.
Oh, incredible. So
sorry. I go on a soapbox and I'm like,
thank God you do. It's the truth, and it feels so good to hear. And it's very, very hopeful because, again, you're finding a solution to keep the legacy operator in, also while preserving the culture and marrying the two. So you've got RAKIM and Insane Farms. They're partnering.
Infamous Farms,
Infamous Farms, excuse me.
That's okay.
I just smoked some of that insane, I forget what the strain was because it was so strong.
I'm not here eating edibles. These are our RAKIM edibles. I'm like,
nice.
They're so good.
What are they?
So we actually, one of the cool things that we do is we have hemp-derived Delta-9 edibles as a product of ours. So hemp products, and this is not HHC, it's not Delta-8, it's Delta-9 that is, hemp is defined as it had to have been grown in a manner in which 0.3% or less total THC is the THC content of the product. And the end consumer product has to be 0.3% total THC or less. In the middle, whatever happens in the middle is protected by what's called hemp work in progress. We manufacture gummies. These gummies are 10 milligrams of Delta-9 THC, meaning if I extract all the THC out as a byproduct and then I formulate a product that goes to the end consumer at 0.3%, it's still considered a hemp-derived agricultural product. It's protected by the 2018 Agricultural Improvement Act. Yes. So we make 10 milligram Delta-9 gummies that can be available in convenience stores. Don't have to be sold in dispensaries. It's catching on in popularity in the market right now, in the marketplace right now. For us, it's to create cannabis products that are accessible in places that don't have access to legal, recreational, or medical cannabis. It's clean cannabis products. So we work with a distributor. We will launch in stores in the next, 2 weeks. Our distributor has a footprint of 75,000 locations. So that's really exciting for us.
Yes. Can you
Thank you.
name? Oh my God, congratulations. That's huge. Are you able to
it's a journey.
Are you able to name the distributor yet?
We're working with it's Club 13, and they distribute hemp derived and kratom products and things like that, but they're pretty widely everywhere. So incredible. We're looking forward. We're not going to launch in 75,000 locations initially. We're going to focus our market on places that don't have access to clean, high quality cannabis initially.
I love that. And your hemp background is just so fascinating to me. We have a hemp background. My production company, my husband and I, because we live in Texas, it's
what part of Texas?
We're right outside of Austin.
Oh, nice!
Yeah,
it's super nice. My investor partner is in Bernie.
Oh, awesome! That's our area. We're in New Braunfels.
So nice.
We can meet.
It's so nice there. That's a Good Blend, right? Is out there?
Yes, Good Blend's out there.
Are they San Marco?
Yes. Are you working with Certera or Good
No?
Blend?
They're 3 licenses under the Compassionate Care Act in Texas. You guys have a 1% low THC market.
Yep.
There are 3 operators in that space. Good Blend is owned by the Wrigley, right? Is that correct?
No, it's Certera. They're actually a client of ours.
Oh, great.
Yeah, because, what we need in Texas is more education, less fear, more, it sounds so trite, but it's like we do really have to break the stigma every day. And sometimes it's just smoking a joint on camera. And I am a Texas woman. I pay a lot of Texas taxes, like just having those conversations. And Good Blend sees that in, I think, the work that we do. And so we partner on, a number of things. And so I'm so thrilled to know that Black Market Group and Good Blend will be working together. I'm a patient. I have a prescription in Texas, so I will be able to have these products and talk about these products. And
Texas's journey has been really interesting as a state. They had the 0.5% low THC market, but it was edibles only. Now, once the Hemp Agriculture Improvement Act passed, a lot of people were not activating on that. They have it was minimum of 3 licenses. That's what they granted. And then last year they voted to they were going to bump it to 5%, but they ended up bumping to 1%. That was an interesting journey to watch go down in Texas.
Yeah, we were there.
But they kind of have set the standard for they set the standard for, this idea that a product, because all 3 of those operators sell potent cannabinoid products kind of a la the same way that we are manufacturing our gummies, in that it's counting this thing on a finished weight process. An average gummy weighs 5 grams. So, I could put a 15 milligrams of THC into our gummies. I want to avoid accidental over medication. That's a big concern for me, for folks, is making sure that they don't over medicate when they're getting used to having access to clean cannabis. But it is an interesting market because they do have a really strong edibles market, and then they opened it up to PTSD this year. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
But they did not open it up to pain, right?
No pain. Pain was left off the bill. So PTSD, but all types of cancer. And what's really, I think, heartening is that we're seeing more doctors join the program. We have a very high approval rate for those Texans seeking prescriptions.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's a very high approval rate because doctors understand, who are in the program, that if you're already medicating with cannabis, then it probably makes sense. I mean, it seems like the conditions are limited, but there are over 100 conditions. And if you played football in high school and got a concussion, you qualify. And we have a lot of Texans who've gotten concussions in many ways.
That's great to hear that the doctors are embracing. Yeah, it's really great to hear that they're embracing that, because a lot of medical markets, when they came on board, I mean, I even look back to think of Oregon. There are still, to this day, hospital systems or healthcare systems that refuse to allow anybody who is employed by them to prescribe cannabis, which is wild because we have accessible recreational cannabis in our state, and there are still hospital systems who won't prescribe.
Yeah, it's
a lot of Catholic systems.
Yeah, of course. They won't prescribe, and they won't give the condoms, and they're just going to pray over you. So that's the highest margins, okay, on that prayer. I was raised Catholic and went to Catholic schools, so I feel like I have a right to kind of make
to be critical. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Right, thanks.
I think this will be interesting long term. My imagination is that I imagine that they're probably going to be one of those states that says only cannabis grown in Texas can be sold in Texas. They're going to stay out of a national marketplace even during Fed legalization. They feel to me like one of those states that's really going to, because that's very Texas, going to continuously define their own cannabis market their own way.
That's right. That feels right from the insider's perspective. But when you think about it in these terms, if everyone who bought a joint last week in Texas voted, we would have a very different looking, leadership at the Capitol. And this year, in November, every elected official is up for re-election. And it's a big deal. So I'm super, super hopeful. It's just about getting, letting adults have access to this medicine. Period. And farmers' economic liberty. Because, we're fighting hemp flower. Yeah, right? Right. Well,
let me make choices about my circumstances, and why are you regulating what I put in my body?
Right.
And the reality is, it's the same conversation. Like, I don't want to swing too hard into deep of politics, but outlawing abortion doesn't get rid of abortions. It gets rid of safe abortions.
Yeah.
Outlawing cannabis doesn't get rid of cannabis. It gets rid of safe, accessible, clean, tracked cannabis, right? We don't people do their thing.
Yes.
We know from history herstory. Looking at women are going to make reproductive choices for themselves, period. And so all you do is add stigma. All you do is reduce it's a negative public health impact.
It truly is. It's inhumane. Mm-hmm. It's inhumane. And I want to see more humans taking, being in positions of leadership and, really caring about Texans and not their own self-interests. Because unfortunately, that's really what we're seeing at the top. But we did lead the way in our psilocybin research bill, 1802. I'm sure you followed that. It's mandatory psilocybin research on vets. And that's happening right now in Baylor. And New York is adopting all of the language of that bill, apparently. I am lucky enough to know just be in contact with the representative who authored that bill, Alex Dominguez. And he's like so proud. He's like, New York wants this language. And I'm just like,
shout out.
We're doing
Thank you,
something
Alex.
right? Exactly. From Rio Grande Valley. Mm-hmm. So
good. I mean, that stuff is so meaningful. I even my own self, like I can't strongly recommend it enough to folks. Mm-hmm. Meaningful, thoughtful use. I mean, also people like to get fucked up. So I think that's something inherently human and beautiful about the fact that throughout time and history, we have to alter our mental state just for the sake of it. And that's okay. Yeah. But and that's what I'm saying. We don't always have to dress everything in medical clothes, but there are immense medical, emotional, and mental health benefits to access to psychedelics for folks. People have meaningful experiences. All the research shows and supports that even when someone had a quote unquote negative experience in a clinical trial, that they still 6 months later would count it as a more meaningful experience in their life. So I think having adult access to psychedelics is a great next step in this larger movement.
Absolutely. Here. God, I could talk to you all day, Annick. Oh my God. But I have to ask you this 3 questions, and they're the same 3 questions I ask all of my guests. It's very important for consistency. All right. So the first question is, tell me who is in your dream smoke circle, dead or alive.
Listen, I have actually gotten to do this now, right? That's the whole thing that's wild.
I feel like you would say that. You are the type of chick who would be like, actually, yeah, I did that.
I get to do it. It's crazy. We, at our event at Emerald Cup, right, was approachable smoke sesh, right? Because everybody has these stories. I even did before I was in the weed space where it's I smoked weed with Snoop Dogg once. I smoked weed with DMX once, right? I got to tell all these tales. Yeah. So I wanted to recreate that. So I got to smoke weed with Corrupt and members of Wu-Tang, and that was fantastic. And so I actually get to do this stuff now, and it is wild. I was backstage at Cali Vibes when Wu-Tang was performing at Cali Vibes in SoCal, and I was backstage in the trailer smoking with Capadonna and Method Man. So life is crazy. I get to smoke weed with RAKIM all the time. It's bananas.
Oh my God.
What?
I love that. Oh God, I love that. Oh, maybe
pretty ridiculous.
That's just amazing. I wish I could just be a fly on the wall. Maybe you could have some sort of GoPro situation.
We're definitely gonna hang out anyway. So we have so much weed to smoke together.
We do so much weed to smoke together. I want to compare sales stories.
So much weed.
Yeah. I'm just so grateful. One of the things that we're really trying to impress upon Texans is that this, of course, is a medicine, but it's a plant that grows in your backyard, and it should be abundant. We should not be stingy with it. We should not. It's abundant. It's come on,
that's foundational to our brand concept too. We really talk about is the weed is for the people, and high quality, accessible, responsibly grown, ethically grown cannabis is affordable. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's what we've done provides us. It's this opportunity to provide affordable, high quality, terpene rich cannabis to the people.
Oh,
like
yes.
That is it. The people want the weed and we are here to give it to them.
That's right. We're here to give it to them with style, and remembrance of legacy. Okay, so question number 2 is, what other woman is inspiring you right now in the cannabis space?
Oh man, there are so many absolute powerhouses in this space, especially when you start to look at some of these companies like Weed Maps and Leafly and things like that are women. The laboratory company in Oregon, Greenleaf Labs, is owned and operated is a female founded operator. I mean, honestly, like, it's an ocean. It would be difficult for me to name a single person because there are women at every single level, at every single place in this industry right now making influence. I would say shout out to the mama the plant mama in Southern Humboldt somewhere with one beautiful baby feeding off her breast while she cares for her plant. How about her? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, that's who's killing it. All of us are killing it. I'm grateful that there are women in this space right now, but shout out to the plant mamas in the hills. Raising their beautiful naked children, running around their weed farms. It's so great. I love it so much.
So amazing. I need to get there.
You should follow True Mom and Pop on Instagram. It's a sweet, sweet couple. It's a really small farm I think they're on the border of Trinity and Humboldt, and they're so cute. And they're just like little kids running around, like a sweet little kid running around chasing chickens. And I'm like, those are the real warrior women in this space out here.
I love it. Love those vibes. There's something about that feels very Texan as well. Like Texas, strong women. We work the land. We're not afraid of hard work. Neither are men. What are we doing? Keeping ourselves away from the plant. You know? Oh, that's a tragedy. Okay, so third question, third and final. What advice do you have for your 13-year-old self?
Your boobs, I swear, will grow in. No.
I swear, they're coming.
I swear, they're coming. Just hold tight. No,
that's where you start. Perfect.
I know you're a fucking weirdo, but that's okay. You're gonna grow into yourself, and it's all right to be a fucking weirdo. Yes. It's all right.
It's all right, babe. Oh, goddamn. You are fucking cool, Annick. You are cool. How can people find you?
Fun.
Good.
At Black Market Certified on Instagram is the best way to follow our exploits as we go from state to state, trying to building an empire for my chickens to inherit.
Beautiful. I'm glad / kind of sad they didn't break in, although I did hear them at the door.
Do you hear my turkey right now? He's yelling at the door right now.
You are incredible, and I'm a huge fan, a massive fan, and anything I can do for you, we can do for you, please just don't hesitate to let me know.
I appreciate it. This was so wonderful. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be on here. And when I'm down in Texas, I'll be sure to hit you up too, because we go down there. Let's go have a good old Texas time. Get some Rudy's barbecue.
Ooh, we'll get
cream corn and brisket tacos.
Sister, you know. I'll introduce you to some Liberty Market growers down here. So we call it the Liberty Market in Texas because it's still very much all illegal, and they are risking their freedom every day to do it.
Yes.
And we grow some fire down here. I'm very proud of what our farmers do in horrible circumstances. So I will be honored.
I can't wait until they get to step out of the shadows and take the credit that they all deserve. Well, I mean, listen, it's one thing, I will say that. It's one thing to be a legacy operator in Northern California, and for sure camp was insane, and, people coming out of helicopters and all of that militarization was gnarly, but also the consequences for being an operator in some of these other states were markedly higher. Right. Markedly higher. And for what folks have done to keep this plant accessible to people and the risks that people have taken, I'm grateful for that. That's what Black Market Group is at the core of it, is that we know that people took crazy risks to make sure the cannabis made it to the people. So thank you, Texas operators. We appreciate you.
I felt that. We got to end on that note. Thank you, Annick Goldsmith. Thank you. Come back.
So much.
We'll talk soon.
I appreciate it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. It was so nice to meet you.
So great to meet you. If you'd like more, subscribe to the Feminized podcast on YouTube. Follow at Feminized with Liz Grow on Instagram. Special thanks to our sponsors Moose Labs and Richard's Rainwater. The Feminized podcast is a Grow House Media production, created by Liz Grow, produced by Patrick Pope and Dennis Ray, with original theme music and audio mixing by Q at Q to King Productions in New Braunfels, Texas.